Okay guys, I'm back. It's been about a week now since I've worked on this and finished the weathering up. I got sick and I had to get over that. That sucked. And then I also had to move a few things around because you'll now notice I have a keyboard in the background here. And it's because I recently ordered a desktop computer for my online gaming. I'm into flight simulators and all that kind of stuff is another hobby of mine. It's just one of those things, and I had to make some room. I wasn't able to put the computer where I originally thought, so I ended up having to put it here on my desk for the moment, and it might stay here for quite a while. So try to ignore that. That's the reason why I couldn't jump right back into this. But anyways, I got the car set up, and at this point in time, it's time to do probably the hardest part of the project, which is doing the graffiti. Like I said, this is one of those things you can't rush. It really takes a long time to do, and it's just best to always take your time, do one tag at a time, and just work slowly until you get it just right. So for this method, I always like to use my fine tip brushes, and here's a couple that I use. Well, actually two that I use. The other's an example here. And I'll go ahead and show this real quick. This is a brush you generally don't want to use. This was a fine tip brush, and you can see the bristles have all pretty much shagged out at this point from years of use. And you want to avoid using brushes like this to do graffiti because you can't get straight lines. You're not going to be able to get clean straight edges. It's not going to be a flat even application of paint. It's going to be blotchy, and you're going to have large streaks showing, bubbles, all that kind of stuff is going to be as a side effect of using a brush like this. So never use a brush like this to do graffiti. Always use your finest brushes like these to do it. So stuff like this, a brush like this is with this fine tip here, this is generally good for filling in the tags. And then a brush like this is always good for doing the fine outlines, doing the small tags around the main graffiti work, stuff like that. And these are my favorite brushes. This is an Atlas 10.0, I think a 0500 brush. Very fine. This is the finest I've found in my area and I've found online. And these work the best for the graffiti that I do. I've never been let down by these. And as you can tell, I always like to buy these in bulk. I always like to have a good selection of these on hand. For graffiti, because I do go through them pretty fast, but I haven't really been doing too much graffiti, so this one's lasted a couple projects now. I've been able to do 10 cars with this one brush. It's amazing. So anyways, brushes like this, like I said, are great for the graffiti. Also, the paint you're going to be using, generally you want to stick with craft acrylic. This stuff is cheap. You can get it at Walmart, you can get it at a fine craft store, and it will last you a long time. I've literally had this very color, Island Blue, for 4 years now, and it's still going strong. I've used it on multiple cars. I've used it for pretty much painting projects, and like I said, it's very efficient, lasts you a long time. It's literally 50 cents a bottle. I mean, come on, you can't beat that. And it works great for graffiti. It really does. I use this straight out of the bottle. I don't usually dilute it. However, if you like to go to the diluted route because you're finding it's a bit, a little too chunky or it's a bit too thick, you can use rubbing alcohol. I don't recommend you use straight tap water. Rubbing alcohol seems to work the best in breaking this acrylic paint down. It really does, and it helps for the best application, a nice smooth surface. It basically helps with the surface tension too a little bit, but it just helps to, it just applies better in my opinion compared to mixing acrylic with water, where it's very diluted and it just kind of has a tendency to just kind of blotch out. Mixing it and diluting it with rubbing alcohol avoids this, unless you're putting a whole bunch of rubbing alcohol in. Remember, if you're going to dilute it, you're making a paste about the consistency of like enamel paint, where you think it's got a bit of thickness to it. It's not quite like water, and it's not quite like skim milk. It's just above that. It still has a bit of thickness to it. That's what you're going to go for if you are going to dilute it. So just a side tip there. But yeah, I'm going to be doing all the graffiti with these craft acrylics here. I got tons and tons of colors I'm going to be using. I got the colors standing by. I'm going to start looking through some photos here of some graffiti online to try to find the tags I want to use for this particular car, because as I said before, I can't find pictures of the exact car, so I'm just going to take what I can find offline and use it for this particular car. Alright, so basically I look up cars online. I just look on Google Images, try to find cars. In this case, I strayed away from using an SSW prototype for a graffiti reference and used this car because I was rather interested in this graffiti tag and this one here, which I can't get the exact corner bit here, but I'm going to use this for this part of the car here. Okay, so when I do the graffiti, as I showed in the Storm Stripper car, that video, I use a mechanical pencil to trace out a light outline of the graffiti where I want to position it. You can, of course, freehand everything, but I find this harder for myself to do it that way. So I like to have a general background. You don't want to put it too heavily on the side of the car. You just want it enough where you can get a basic outline of where you want to put this stuff for the graffiti. So I'm going to start trying to fill this in here best I can with all of the lines and everything else. Backgrounds, of course, we'll worry about later. Right now it's just about trying to get the basic outline here, and then we'll start filling it in a minute. And again, I do this one tag at a time generally, just so I can concentrate all my effort on it. You know, that's just me. You can, of course, do multiple outlines at the same time if you choose to do that. However, you want to go in a direction where you're going. Since I'm right-handed, I'm going to be pretty much going, you know, I either start from this side and work my way down this way, but basically you just want to make sure you're not going to rub your hand over any of this, because you don't want to, you know, blotch it all over the place and then get black charcoal smear all over the place, you know. So I'm just going to keep working on this, and I'll come back in a second. Once I've done the basic outline of the car, I'm going to bring the light back into this. That way I can have the full lighting effects, and I'm going to start filling in all the little areas inside the pencil line. That way I can keep things, you know, I don't want this to get oversized. That's what I was trying to say. So if you go outside the outline, then what happens is you put another outline over that, and then a background, and then it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I want to keep this relatively fine, pretty decently fine work. Not trying to make it a big fat graffiti text, basically, is what I'm trying to say also. I'm terrible with words, if you noticed. So what do you do? But yeah, I'm just going to basically go and start filling this in, starting with these little corner square things that are part of the tag in this photo I'm looking at here. I'm just filling in with some of the light blue color. And again, I haven't lightened this up anyway. I'm just using it straight out of the bottle. That way it covers quickly. A color like blue usually covers pretty fast and pretty evenly, but lighter colors like oranges, yellows, whites, stuff like that, any color that's a relatively light, thin color like that, it's going to take a couple more coats usually to fully cover the area, unless you're modeling a tag that's somewhat old, where then you want to have some of that transparency where it's starting to look kind of aged. And in this case, I'm not going too crazy with these. I don't want them to look brand spanking new, so I'm going to go relatively light with the paint coats. I wish I had time lapse on this camera. I could just basically fast forward through this process, but this is basically it in a nutshell. The long, grueling part of this is just having to take the time and fill all this in. But you guys will be lucky on this part, because in the next second, you'll see the finished, you know, work. So I'll come back in a second and show you what I get here. Alright, so I just spent the last hour and a half filling in the DNK and then this tag here as well, which I filled in. And it took about 3 coats on this one to cover it completely, and then 2 on this one since it's a darker blue. And then I put the blue highlight, or the color difference, on there as well. So what I'm going to try to do next, before I do any of the detail work, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the tag on this part of the car. So I'm going to start tracing that out and then filling it in. And then I won't show that just because it's the same thing as I showed this. It's just filling in, doing the outlines and then filling it in. But once I get all that done, I'll set the car aside, put this bit of, or these clips on my computer, that way I can get them off the camera. Then I'll come back and film the outline portion of the car. Right, so I just finished the graffiti, pretty much filled it in. I also, like I said, did this graffiti here. I was going to patch over the number, but when I got the picture for this particular tag here, I decided I wanted to just keep it like it was, and what I'll do later is just put the numbers over the graffiti. just to make it look like they did patch over it, but they just put the numbers over the graffiti like they do on a lot of these cars instead of going with a complete patch job. So now that this is pretty much ready to go for the basic outlining. Alright guys, so I'm going to again take my fine tip brush, but this time I'm going to use my black acrylic, good old trusty black, flat black acrylic. And you can use this thing out of the bottle like all the other acrylics, but in this particular case I want this to go on relatively smooth and light, and I need it to be able to flow around all of these corners. I can't have it dragging and then having the bristles cut into the tag. I usually like to try to, you know, get this all in one setting. I don't like having to go back and touch stuff up. It happens sometimes, but I like to avoid it as much as possible. It's better to be, you know, safe than sloppy, if you will. So what I'm going to do is take a little mixing cup here, and I'm going to put just a little bit of acrylic into this container, and then I'm going to dilute it with a little bit of rubbing alcohol here, which is 50%. And then I'm going to mix it. Again, I just want to really thin this out. Matter of fact, that actually is a little, might be a little too much alcohol, but let's see what I can get out of this here. If I have to, I can add more paint to it, but I'm just creating a dilution. I'm going to take the brush, pick up a little bit of paint. You don't want to coat the entire brush, just the tips of the bristles. That way it stays sharp. Like this, you can see this is a really sharp edge. And then you just go around and you start filling this in one little bit at a time. So this is what I've gotten done. As you can see, we got the outline on the first tag put in, got it on the second tag, and I've just finished the third tag in the corner of the car here. And this one I've already started putting some of the details, so I've got the white highlights in, the lines, and then I've put in the little dots just to kind of take care of this for the moment until we finish it up later, excuse me. I'm getting pretty tired. It's 2 in the morning now. I've been working on this thing for 6 hours straight doing the graffiti. I'm completely wiped out. So I'm going to call it a night, and we'll come back and I'll start laying in some of the details, refining some of the lines up a bit, especially on this last one here. Since I put in the rough outline, there's a lot of places I'm going to need to correct and stuff like that. So I'll do that tomorrow. Okay, so I've just started finishing up the outlines on all these tags, and I just finished this one here in the corner. I've gone ahead and started putting some of the details, like these little dots in the background and all this, some of the white highlight lines on the DNK tag here in the middle, because it's a bit simpler. I just wanted to get this out of the way for now. I'll finish it up later once I get these two done, but I really want to now try to focus my efforts on getting these two done and detailed up. So I got a lot to do to them both, but right now it's pretty late. I've been working on this thing for 8 solid hours now. My back and my neck are killing me. It feels like my tailbone is literally riding into my butt right now. It sucks, but it's pretty late too. It's going on 2 in the morning, so I'm going to call it a night for now, and then I'll come back to it the next, hopefully tomorrow. But that's pretty much it for now. But there's still a lot of detail work to do, and like I said, it's taken 8 hours to get this far, and there's still so much to do. You know, people ask me all the time if I can do cars for them, and if I can do it quickly, or if I can do, you know, 50-car trains with this level of detail in it. And I always have to try to, it's hard to explain to people what all goes into a car like this, you know. It's like, I can do this stuff for other people, but, you know, something like this that takes, you know, 8 hours just to do graffiti and another 10 to do the weathering, you know, that's something that's just not efficient, trying to do that multiple cars at a time, let alone a 100-car coal train or some crap like that. It's just one of those things I wish more people would kind of understand. It's an art form, you know, and it takes time to do this stuff. It just can't be done in mass quantity all at once. So, you know, that's just my little rant about that. But anyways, I'll go ahead and cut this for now, and we'll get started, and we'll put most of the detailing in the next section here. Okay, this is what I got. I went ahead and did some stuff. I was going to film it, but it ended up being my internal memory was full again. didn't warn me, so I filmed some parts and then realized it didn't save them because I had no more room in my memory card. So I had to take it out, unload it, realize what I did. So it's like, fuck, you know, because I ended up wasting a lot of good footage, especially on this part here. I was kind of trying to go into detail with some of the stuff I did, but you know, I got to start watching this camera because I'm not glancing over at the monitor enough while I'm doing this because I'm so heavily focused on when I'm, you know, doing this. So I'm basically talking to myself, not filming it, so that sucks. But this is what I got done so far. I've gotten the tag in the corner here pretty much done. So this one's pretty much complete. I got all the little dots, all the color transitions, all the outlines and everything. It's all nicely detailed in. Also, I removed the tape patches here in the corner too, so you can see it's revealing the car data underneath, which is important to save on a car like this. If you're modeling fresh graffiti, you can get away with it. But a lot of times the professional artists will work around car data like this because they're aware of the railroads patching all this over because it's a requirement to have that data. So you might still want to work around that cleverly. Again, just refer to prototype photos and just, you know, try to copy what you see to the best of your ability, depending on what that looks like. But in this case, I wanted to have that look like it's a relatively fresh patch out. It's just trying to kind of bleed over a little bit. On the center bit of graffiti work, it's really hard to see. The lighting's terrible. I'm not sure how it's going to come out on YouTube here, but I've added all the little dots that the tag had. So you got the black dots, some pink dots, some little white dots here and there, and I got the black border outline sandwiching the graffiti and basically sealing it in place on the middle of the door there. And on the corner here, I've perfected the other tag here. I've gone ahead and put in the outline, and I've started putting in the pink dots. I'm not going to go too much crazier with this. I've also added the color transition here between the seafoam green and then this lime green here as a neat little color transition that adds some neat character to the tag itself. And you can see it looks really cool. And then of course the graffiti was patched here. I had the tape under it. I peeled that off and basically it just reveals the card data underneath, and then the reporting mark, or not the reporting mark, but the stencil here, and then the card data, which is important to keep as well. So that looks pretty realistic. And I'm going to start basically finishing this bit of graffiti up now. And again, I'm going to return to my island blue. And I'm going to start doing the little bits of color transition at the top of the tag. So again, I'm going to take my fine tip brush. I'm going to start adding the little bits of color transition, these little squares just here and there. It's a relatively light color, so you may have to go over this, you know, several times depending on whatever color you're using. You may have to change it up a couple times, but I'm just going to start putting some of these color transitions in. Yeah, that one got a little rough. That's okay. We'll just bring it up to the edge of the reporting mark patch out there. It'll blend right in. And if you need to, you can go over these with the color, the seafoam color again, and you can touch the edges up to make it look a little bit more squared up, a little bit more neat and tidy, if you will. So your call there. Sometimes the little details like dots and stuff like that, sometimes they try to make them as perfect as possible, and other times they'll be really sloppy. So again, try to, whatever you're working with, prototype photo wise, try to refer to that and copy it, what you're seeing in the photos, like I'm doing here. I added the little squares, got those cleaned up. I touched up the edges so that they look nice and neat. I've also worked on the purple a little bit more. It took a couple minutes. Just to kind of touch it up a little bit, make it look a little neater as well. I got my white acrylic now, and I'm going to start doing the smaller tags in the corners. Usually these guys will put their signature or some goofy saying or something on the side, and you usually want to just take some thin white acrylic, and you can use a brush for this again and just write it on there. You can also use a paint pen, but in areas like around doors and stuff, it's just better to use a brush, because a paint pen's not going to get right up against the edges of seams or sills or anything like that. So it's just best to use a brush most of the time for this. So I'm just going to start writing it. Most of this stuff is uneligible too, so it makes it kind of hard to really decipher what exactly he, you know, whatever the person wrote on there. So you don't want to try to, you know, focus on actually making letters. Just try to basically scribble in what it looks like from the photos, and it'll basically look right. So there's going to be one more white one up here above the K on this tag in the door. I've switched to my Micron pen, and I'm going to be using a fine marker here just to put some more little tags in the just above the R here. Put one here, and underneath that, and then one at the top here as well. So those are just the small little tags I put in. You see they're looking pretty good. Alright, so this side is pretty much completed for now. I got all the graffiti on. What I'm going to do now is put a dull coat over this to kind of seal everything together and basically protect it. That way nothing else scratches it. I might even put some washes around the door track here, because generally the graffiti on the door will get beat up worse than the stuff on the sides, because of the way the door comes out. Stuff was always impacting the sides here, and it's always getting, you know, touched by hand and stuff when they're opening this. So a lot of times the graffiti just gets worn out. Plus, because of the way the rust runs down, it'll usually run through the door, all the tracks on the doors and all these rungs and stuff. So it's generally better to kind of weather up the graffiti on the door. Again, unless you're modeling a you know, relatively new, fresh tags, then you can ignore that. So anyways, that's pretty much this side. Like I said, I've been working on this for I think 5 hours now. I started at 11 o'clock this morning, and I just got done here, and it's going on 2:30 now. I'm pretty tired, so I'm going to try to just seal this up for now, and then I'll come back later on and kind of start looking through some photos and see what I can try to figure out for the next side. I won't film as much for the next side though, just because, you know, you guys basically get the idea with the graffiti. It's the same exact procedures, and I'm just basically going to be doing it for this side of the car, essentially. It's pretty much the same process, though I will show that pretty much when it's done at the end, but it's just basically a rough go over of kind of my graffiti methods again. So this has taken 12 hours to do the graffiti, and that's on one side. It's pretty crazy. It's you know, it takes time to do this kind of stuff, but it really does look good once it's done, you know, and I really like this so far. I'm really getting excited to see what this will look like when it's done. So from where I left off from the last update on the car, I've added a few more tiny individual tags that were on the prototype that I thought would make you know, just kind of some interest, a little bit more realism too. So you get a little bit of the gang scribble here and there, and then I just finished basically the detailing on each of these tags. So this side is pretty much finished. It's ready to go. I will have to put, unfortunately, the numbers back over the graffiti on this side. So I'll have to do that here in the next coming step. And also from the last video, I got the opposite side of this card done here. Check this out. Pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with how this side came out. I'll show you the prototype in a minute that I picked all these tags off of. In the corner, you got all the individual tags, a larger tag there, and then you got the bit of graffiti at the bottom here. I apologize for the lighting. It's really sucky right now. I'm trying to get this as best as I can. I mean, you get the idea. You can see the details and all that. I put a yellow backdrop on that for detail effect, and then you got a crappy older tag in the middle. And this one I'll probably put a wash or two over to make it look a little bit more aged. Since it's kind of one of those first generation tags that you see a lot of times kind of sandwiched between newer stuff like this happens to be. And then in this corner we have done this tag here, and I've gone ahead and put the background. All the details are in place. It's detail wise on this tag, it's not too exquisite, but it still looks pretty cool. And again, I copied it from photos. I think it looks very convincing. So I'm pretty happy with the graffiti. That was the hardest part, and that's finally out of the way, and we're pretty much on the home stretch to completing this car. Real quick, I will pull up the prototype photo of where I got the graffiti from. This is from Flickr. This is the tag that I used here. Then that tag, these are all the ones I used on the car as well. This tag is the one I used for the door, and then this tag here is the one I used on the corner of the car as well, and I just added some of my own little details to it to kind of make it original. Of course, I wasn't copying this exact car, but just bits and pieces of the graffiti that I wanted. And that's the nice thing about doing this. You can take what you like, leave what you don't like. So this photo here came out very handy in completing the car. So now, at this point, we can start wrapping up the weathering on the car itself. So I'm going to start applying some chalks here, and I like to use this bright rust earth tone. I think it's a great color to use on trucks, especially. It gives that nice color variation and kind of that detail enhancement on the trucks. You don't want to load the bristles up, you just want enough that you can put it in a few of these little spots, like around the springs and stuff like that. Don't try to work it in too much. You don't want to scrape the trucks up too badly and then, you know, start removing some of your weathering, but just really lightly, just work it in just to add some color variation. Again, you can go into as much detail with this as you like. I have a general method of just, I want to achieve a color variation difference, you know, with the trucks, because that's the most realistic, basically, to go with it. You want that color variation is what I was trying to say. I might even add a little mud splatter to the trucks here in a minute as well, but right now I'm going to keep working the chalks into the wheel faces as well. And again, this just enhances the color of the truck and adds that really much more realistic, kind of that, what would you call it, a dusty rust color that the trucks generally get. It's very realistic. So I'm going to just repeat this for all the wheels real quick and the truck side frames before we move on to the couplers. So I'm applying the chalks now to the door track area and on all of these little struts and seams and beams and such on the door to add some color variation as well. So you just put a little bit, and you don't really need to work it too heavily unless you're modeling something where there's some pretty significant color variation. I'm just going out relatively light, just in certain places here and there. So around this middle track here, on the door track itself here, in these corners. Pretty much just in all these random places, just to add some highlights. start working just a little bit onto the graffiti. Not too much though. I don't want it to overpower it too much. I just want it to look like there's a little bit of rust just starting to kind of bleed through onto the graffiti of the car here as well. I've put a little bit of chalk on these tack boards as well, just to add some more kind of, you know, nice little bits of color variation, just here and there. And I'll just basically repeat this all over the car for where I need it. Also, I'll do the couplers. Alright, I'm taking a little bit of the earth color again. I've mixed a little bit of rust tone into this as well, just to add some color variation. And this really helps to make your couplers pop. Makes them look a lot more realistic, because the couplers and the wheels themselves are especially culprits to obtaining the dusty rust effects that you see. So it's important to try to model that instead of having one flat solid color. I like to just kind of break up that solid color a little bit by adding these dusty chalk effects here. Sorry about that, guys. I'm just working it all over the coupler. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush now and start working on the coupler boxes. Again, just to add some color variation, working under the walkway. Just try to be careful not to bust off any detail parts. You want to avoid that. And then also up here, like I said, it's just really working this into a lot of random areas to have that color transition where you need it. And I'm going to continue to work this in on the coupler box. I'll flip the car over a little bit too in a minute, so I can really get under here and work that in, just where the eye is going to see it the most. You don't have to go crazy with this, but you know, you just still want to have this pretty well coated. And again, the same for the opposite side. I've already done the coupler box up a little bit. Just going to work some onto this little panel here. A little bit on the walkways as well. I'm trying to be very careful, especially when you work with photo etch. You don't want to bust these fragile pieces, or even these air hose or the coupler bar. You always want to just be very cautious when working around those. Don't smack the brush against those. Just work very gently around it until you get the color exactly how you want it. Put a little bit on this tack board here on the end as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do the patches now, and as you can see, I've put some gray paint down. And I just made a very basic patch. I didn't want this to look extremely, you know, neat and clean. Usually these are just quick patch sprays, and they just put the graphics over it. I'm using Microsol right out of the bottle, and I'm just going to apply this in one little area at a time. It's usually best just to work in one area at a time instead of just throwing it all on there, because the Microsol does dry out pretty quickly. So I only just apply what I need in a tiny area at a time. Just gonna put these on here. I'm just grabbing the 46. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply the safety striping, and I have my pre-cut strips of reflective tape positioned out here, and I'm just going to apply them to the sides of the car, like this pretty much. Nothing really complicated here. And depending on what era of the car you're modeling is, if these are from the early 2000s, safety striping wasn't too much of an issue then. But if you're modeling a car like this in the present, like I am here, you want to definitely put the safety striping on it. Oops. Because it's a modern requirement. I'm just putting these bands just in some random areas. So here is the car, pretty much in its finished state. Just going over everything. We've weathered the car, we've put the graffiti on it, we put the safety striping and all that on it, and it looks very, very nice. And this is basically my technique for doing these modern cars. Like I said, I have another one of these I got to do, but I won't do it until later. This car here took me approximately at least 2 days of work to do combined. That both sides took about 8 hours in terms of graffiti, and then the weathering, of course, was extra as well. I think I spent about 10 hours doing the weathering on the car, so it definitely adds up over time. But it's worth it in the end when you get results like this. This you literally could pass as a real car. If it was stuck on some rails right now and you had a realistic backdrop, it would look like a real road car. So I'll just go over this real quick. You guys can see all the nice bits of work I've done to it. I'm very happy with it. You got all the patching, got the safety striping there, all that nice weathering. I love that bleached Golden West logo. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I actually did go back over this Golden West service logo with a little bit of white, and then I did some more streaking effects to it to make it look just a bit more beat up, and just to help it also stand out a little bit more. You can see you also got these data patches here, something really nice. The roof came out really good, of course, and on this side, you guys can take a look at that. Looks really, really, really good. There's all the graffiti, all the patching, safety striping, and nice look at the weathering. All really looks nice. So I'm really happy with this car. I'm glad I finally got it completed. Like I said, I got another one of these to do, but I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it yet or not. But more than likely I'll work on it and then either turn around and sell it, or if I like it enough I'll probably keep it like I will with this one here in particular. So that pretty much wraps up this video, guys. Hope it was entertaining to you. Hopefully it kind of shows you a few of more of my techniques basically. So stay tuned for more as always, and be sure to check out my Facebook page. Dan's Custom Trains is my group page. It's where I post pictures of my models. I visit there pretty regularly. We got, I think, under 400 members now. It's really been skyrocketing lately. I really appreciate that, so thanks guys to all of you existing members on there. But if you want to be a part of the group, you guys can join. You guys can look me up there on Facebook. And you can follow my work there if you'd like. Be sure to stay tuned for more YouTube videos as well here on the old tube. And until next time, take care.